There's no love lost between Dana White and Jake Paul. There's no doubt about that. The pair has continually been at odds surrounding issues like fighter pay, and White suggests that Paul isn't a real boxer, which he isn't. Whilst the YouTuber had claimed White as a cocaine user in the past, but could they be set to fight? Probably not. Today we're discussing White branding an MMA journalist and stay with us. Let's jump straight in then. What went down? White recently appeared on a GQ segment called Actually Me, in which he fielded questions from fans, which ranged from fighter pay to his perceived beef with YouTuber Jake Paul. White's problem with Paul goes back a year or two, with White having suggested in the past that Paul is a steroid user and that he has no boxing credentials. And following Paul's cancellation of the Rahman fight recently due to his opponent being too big, yes, you heard us right, White claimed that Paul needs people around him who actually know what they're doing if he wants to be taken seriously as a boxer. The boss said, "I think that Jake Paul probably needs to get some different people around him if he's going to stay in the sport. He needs to be with guys that really know how to put on fights." And whilst that's probably correct, there is a serious feeling around the sport of boxing which suggests that deep down, Paul actually has no interest in fighting a real bona fide boxer. Having pulled out of the Hasim Rahman fight for a ridiculous reason, Rahman was more than 10 pounds overweight more than a week out from the fight. It is universally accepted that Paul has an MO when it comes to choosing opponents. They're generally older than him, have no real boxing pedigree, and are smaller than he is. Rahman only ticked one of these 3 boxes. He's 31. So Paul probably didn't want any of that smoke. What about those suggestions of Paul fighting White? Stay tuned. During the GQ segment, an old tweet by MMA journalist Chamankar Sandhu was brought up. Last year, Sandhu had taken to Twitter to lament the fact that combat sport fans never got to see Dana White fight Tito Ortiz, which had been mooted for a while, admittedly years ago. Sandhu then suggested, rather tongue-in-cheek, that White take on Jake Paul, suggesting they could make it a Triller Fight Club Zuffa Boxing co-promotion for all the marbles. Of course, Dana White was less than impressed with that particular scenario, referencing the fact that he is a 53-year-old man, whilst Jake Paul is in his mid-20s. As illegitimate as Jake Paul surely is as a boxer, Dana White never boxed to any real standard either, so this matchup simply wouldn't be fair. White said, "Come talk to me when you effing are 53 years old and tell me if you want to fight some effing 20-year-old kid. Language please, Mr. White." Dana went on to tell Sandhu that when he's that age, he won't want to be fighting someone in their 20s either, which is absolutely fair enough. In a parting shot, he then called the MMA journalist a naughty word, which we cannot repeat here. Whilst we don't doubt White's reasoning for a second, he's actually someone who Jake Paul would probably like to fight to pad out his fluffed up record even further. What do you think of White's words? Let us know below. Next up, Dana had a bit of a fright at the UFC 278 stare-downs yesterday. Former middleweight champion Luke Rockhold made his long-awaited return to the octagon at this weekend's UFC 278 event in Salt Lake City, Utah. He'll be taking on Brazilian contender Paulo Costa, and sparks are sure to fly. The pair famously don't like each other, and both are on a 2-fight losing streak, so someone will get back on track this weekend. Appearing at yesterday's press conference and following stare-downs, Rockhold took the stage before his opponent and awaited his entrance. Costa then jokingly tried to rush him, before slowing up and meeting Rockhold face-to-face in the center of the stage. Dana White was visibly worried and nearly jumped out of his skin, shouting at Costa, "You scared me," whilst Rockhold kept his cool. White came between the pair, but this one was actually meant to go down back in July. Costa managed to get the matchmakers to push it a few weeks, which of course didn't go down too well with the former champ, who said this expletive didn't want to take the fight in the first place. The UFC forced it down his throat, and then he delayed it twice, month after month, and all the cosmetic expletive he got done. You little shut up. Costa then suggested he will comfortably beat Rockhold this week, claiming he is an old man. I guess we'll find out this weekend. Who you got? Dana has suggested a title shot for Khamzat could be just around the corner next. Stick around. Khamzat Chimaev will return to action next month against Nathan Diaz, in what is being billed by fans and pundits alike as one of the most one-sided fights in recent memory. However, Diaz certainly has the tools to pull off the upset, so he should not be discounted, but Khamzat is the overwhelming favorite. And speaking this week, Dana White has appeared to confirm that should Chimaev get past the Stockton Slugger, then he'll more than likely be in for a title shot next time out. Khamzat was last out against Gilbert Burns in a closer fighter than many anticipated. And talking at his contender series earlier this week, Dana agreed that the possibility of Khamzat facing either Leon or Kamaru next time out is fair. He then went on to say, "I don't ever do that expletive, but yeah, it's fair to say if he wins, that's the fight to make. Usman has already beat everybody twice in the top whatever, so yeah, that makes sense." Of course, it could easily be Leon Edwards he faces, as those two will do battle tomorrow night, which will sort out the welterweight title picture for the next few months at least. But White has also suggested that Kamaru Usman's talk of going to light heavyweight doesn't make sense. However, he did concede that there's not too much he can do if that's what the current welterweight champ wants. The top of the welterweight division is boiling up nicely. Next up, Dana has suggested he might have a way to tempt Nate to stay. White has suggested recently that a title shot might not only be on the table for Khamzat Chimaev should he get past Nate. Of course, it's only fair that if Diaz gets past the scary Chechen, then he is offered a title fight as well. And what a story that would be. The 209 favorites is one of the most popular fighters ever to appear in the UFC octagon. And if he could manage to get past Chimaev, then he would certainly deserve a pop at whoever might have the title. If he was to actually win it, then he would probably be a more popular champion than Michael Bisping won, who went years as a perceived journeyman before toppling Luke Rockhold. Chael Sonnen recently suggested no one knows what's going on with Nate, and he even referenced Dana when he said that this fight represents a #1 contendership. We all know that Diaz is unhappy at the UFC. So if White was to go back on his word and not then offer the winner, if it turns out to be Diaz, a title shot, then he can kiss goodbye to Nate forever. White recently compared Diaz to Leon Edwards, warning people not to count him out when he comes face to face with Khamzat. He said, "You can't count anybody out. In this sport, you never know what's gonna happen. Anything is possible. We can't wait. Who have you got?" And finally, Dana has again come in for criticism regarding fighter pay. Stick around. After the UFC salaries were released following Saturday night's San Diego event, Dana White has yet again taken shots over how little he pays his fighters. Polish heavyweight Lucas Brzeski only made $10,000, which in his day and age with the amount of money the UFC makes is criminal. White regularly receives criticism for how little he pays his fighters, and whilst headliner Marlon Vera made a tidy $300,000, most of the rest of the card made less than $100,000. When you factor in tax, plus gym and coach fees, fighters will be lucky if they bank half of what the UFC gives them, and some fans took to Twitter to describe White as a modern-day slave owner. Whilst this suggestion is clearly ridiculous, slaves were never paid, we understand what the detractors are trying to say, especially as the company is thought to be worth around $4 billion. What do you think is a fair base salary for fighters? Let us know below. As usual, thanks for dropping in today, and remember to stop by again next time for some more fun reveals. And why not do us a solid by liking today's video, whilst also sharing with any MMA heads you might know of. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe. Bye guys!